Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Julian Jordan and I'm the Commercial Director at 365 Digital. Firstly, I would love to thank a few people, Prime Media for hosting us at their beautiful broadcast studios and for their continued partnership, to Triton Digital for their partnership and for assisting in making this possible, and finally to the panelists who we're going to be hearing from a little bit later today. Thank you for tuning in, for the guys tuning in from South Africa and around the globe. We hope that these next moments will be of great value to you. Please note that this webinar will be recorded and can be sent to you. Email us on info@365digital.co.za. We'd love to hear your thoughts, comments and questions throughout the webinar. Please use the Twitter hashtag #DigitalAudioSA, and we'll pick that up throughout the webinar and hopefully get to answering a few of your questions and comments. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome someone that is no stranger to the South African audience and someone who will be your host for the next 1 hour, Sheldon Marias. Sheldon Marias is EWN's online editor. He's an active journalist and a broadcaster and can be heard on 702. In his role as online editor, Sheldon is responsible for leading a team of sub-editors, content editors, producers, multimedia producers and social media producers across Johannesburg and Cape Town. His role is to create, implement EWN's news and digital strategy with his fellow news editors. Under his leadership, EWN won Publisher of the Year at the Bookmark Awards 2015 and 2016, and is also an elected member of the SANEF Council and was appointed to lead the Digital and Broadcasting Committee, which deals with the matters of the Fourth Estate and external developments as they relate to digital and broadcast media. Sheldon, thank you so much for being here today, and over to you.
Thank you, Julian. Audio and digital. So it's been what I've spent the last 14 years doing. I must say, I love digital, I love audio, and I love the possibilities that exist. I think the possibilities that exist, as we've seen with podcasts, and then now listening to this new thing, the new frontier that is programmatic audio. It's certainly going to be a lesson for me. And I'm looking forward to hearing from our panelists, hearing from our contributors today about what it is, what the possibilities are, what possibilities exist, and how we're going to be listening to audio, in years to come. I know we're already listening to podcasts. There's already, obviously, radio is very embedded in the South African listening and consumer traditions as well. But how are podcasts going to change, not only for consumers, but for advertisers as well, and how they make connections with those consumers. So we'll be hearing from our panelists today, and also from the Triton team, the 365 Digital team as well, people who are leading this new frontier that we're going to be talking about today. You know, audio creates such a personal connection. You know, because of often the lack of pictures and visuals, you create this idea in your head, not only of who's talking to you, but what they're talking about as well. So it creates a really intimate space, and people are letting us into their minds and into, you know, into their imaginations as such as well. So you know, we choose to plug into audio in many different ways, whether you choose to listen to the latest album dropped by, you know, Cardi B, or, you know, I think that's I got her right? No, I know exactly who Cardi B is, hottest rapper on the scene right now. Or whether you choose to listen to the opinions of your favorite thought leaders or not, it's all about that connection as well. So from the moment we wake up, you know, you switch on your alarm, your radio's off and on in the background, your commute, you know, it's podcasts while you're at work, you're listening to that as well. You know, we're always tuned in. And I think the possibilities for advertisers are obviously immense and have been for some time. So now people choose to listen to the audio that suits their moods. And what does that do? You know, like what type of adverts, what type of journeys are we plugging into as well? But before we get into that, I just want to give you a brief introduction to 365 Digital and Triton, okay? So Triton Digital and 365 Digital joined forces last year to educate South Africa on the benefits of programmatic audio. Now, if you're wondering what programmatic audio is, don't worry, just like me, we're going to find out exactly what it is, what the possibilities are, and how it could be beneficial to you. Now, and to help publishers and advertisers throughout South Africa leverage the burgeoning digital audio channel to both engage and reach their target audiences across podcasts, broadcast radio streams, online games, sports, and online music services. So already there we have it. It's not just about podcasts. It's not just about, you know, online streaming as such. But I mean, as soon as you start talking online games, sports as well, you know, obviously online music services are growing and continue to grow as well. I'm interested to hear how it all plugs in, because I had a very myopic view in terms of it being podcasts and, you know, online streaming radio. Now, 365 Digital operates Triton's programmatic marketplace in South Africa called A2X. Okay, now A2X is the world's first programmatic marketplace for digital audio. The industry-leading global audio marketplace allows publishers to unleash the power of programmatic by executing non-skippable and brand-safe audio ad buys across a highly engaged digital audience. Now, if you've been working in the digital space already, you know that, you know, there's platforms such as Google and others where programmatic adverts are placed, you know, which obviously saves time, allows for, you know, greater return on investment if done correctly as well. So I'm really interested to see how this plays out in the audio space. But without further ado, today we're going to be doing a deep dive into the world of digital audio, and we're joined by Oscar Semeno from Miami, Florida. He's from Triton Digital. We also joined online, because we are in the online world, by Benjamin Mass from Triton Digital. He's calling in from London, the UK. Decided to enjoy the warm British weather rather than come out to South Africa and feel our cold here. We'll also be hearing a little later from industry professionals during a panel discussion what the thoughts are, to have a discussion about it. That's what I'm really keen to hear. You know, not just what the possibilities are, but, you know, what's holding us back. Where's the South African landscape, you know, versus, you know, let's say Western markets where it may have been tried out, or other markets as well that may be a bit more mature than us. But right now, though, I'm going to hand you over to Benjamin Mass, who's sitting in his warm London office, and he'll be crossing to us and telling us, you know, a bit more about Triton, about A2X, and the benefits that it has.
All right, thank you. So yes, it's indeed quite nice weather in London nowadays. I hope that the summer will be as great as the spring in London. But I'm unfortunately not in South Africa. I was supposed to be with you guys, but somehow my plan changed. So thank you for making a connection, online connection, for me to contribute here. So what I wanted to do is to share some of the numbers and some statistics we're seeing across the globe. So the reason I have a few slides about Triton is just to make you understand where we gather that information. So basically, we've been in business for 11 years, and we have offices across all continents, from Oceania, like in Australia, Southeast Asia, India, then South Africa, the West Africa, North Africa, Middle East, Europe, and all of the Americas. So based on this, we can see and observe various trends, and working with various type of publishers. As it was mentioned in the introductory remarks, we have all types of clients. We have podcast platforms and podcast producers. We have broadcast radio stations and music services part of our client lists. So, and audio has been growing quite steadily because it's a really clever way to reach the consumer when you're a marketer, because it is really mobile. It was not the case 10 years ago, but now most of the consumption of online audio is done through mobile devices. So basically, it's no longer broadcast. It's really like you target a specific consumer. So this is why it's seen as a premium way to reach your audience. And then because it's linked to specific programs, which are usually quite personal. So either someone listen to his favorite station or his favorite artists, or then tune into a playlist they built on a music service, or download a podcast about a specific topic of interest for them. So when the advertiser connects to that audience, they know it's in a really like personal environment, and that creates the right bond between the brand and the listener. So some data now. So I've picked up data from various parts of the world. It's a bit difficult to have comparison across 45 countries because the data points are not necessarily always the same. But to give you some ideas, in the US, more than 65% of the Americans are listening to online audio every month. So it reaches more than half of the population. And then you see in the peaks that it's during the day. So contrary to, I would say, the more traditional radio, broadcast radio, where it's the morning drive and the back home period, it's really in the middle of the day that there's a lot of people consuming audio. And the time spent listening to audio grew quite rapidly from 6 hours a week to more than 13 hours a week nowadays. The last trend I wanted to talk in the US is the rapid growth of smart speakers, which brings a new twist to online audio, because up to now, like I said, it was a personal experience where people are listening through a headset. But now with the smart speaker, it goes back home as a more communal experience, albeit quite targeted, because on smart speakers, you can exactly know who's listening to you. I mean, not necessarily the name of that person, but you know the location and some of the behavioral information related to the household. So it's quite interesting channel for advertiser. Basically, if I share some of the data, you'll see that with the growth of audio, it can really support the other channel that an advertiser is sharing. I'll skip those slides because I want to keep on track. So this slide is quite interesting. So in the last 13 months, of publishers using our platform across 45 countries. So in dark blue, this is campaigns booked by the publisher. So the traditional way of selling online advertisements, where the publisher is talking to a buyer, and then that buyer will send an insertion order for the publisher to traffic. Then the green one is the margin of growth, because this is where the publishers are currently playing promos and things like that. But what is really important and right on topic for today, so the light blue is the programmatic advertisement. So that means either coming from a marketplace, an open exchange, or a programmatic deal. So you see the quite rapid growth from the last 13 months. And this is where we would be expecting a lot of growth in the coming quarters as well. So here, This is a number of impressions that we see in the exchange in A2X. A2X is really an open exchange. That means that any buyers can access the supply of all the publishers that wants to contribute supply to the exchange. And a bit like in display and video, you can transact in real time and position your ad in front of the right audience. So you see that the US is clearly leading the way, but you do have like a fair amount of impression above the 50 million threshold on a weekly basis in Europe, Latin America. So the Middle East and the rest of Asia is growing steadily, but not yet there. A bit behind, but growing quite steadily nonetheless. So in terms of price point, so when you run on the open exchange, that means that you're bidding in real time. So it's really an exchange, like a stock exchange, where some buyers wants to buy, offer a certain price, and the publishers will decide if they want to accept it. But all of this in real time by settings that the publisher will set up. So you see that the US is probably where it's traded at the lowest, around $2.57. But to give you a comparison, online display advertising is about like 50 cents and less. So audio is quite premium compared to the other channel. And then you see in Europe is a bit more value, and then in Latin America much higher. And then Africa and Asia are in the same range of about $3. All of this has been converted into US dollars. So you see, though, the difference if you take just the North America and Central America. So basically Canada has a much higher price point than the US. So this is also interesting to see. I wanted to share this because I know a lot of buyers or publishers would like to know how much they're supposed to budget and what type of strategy they're supposed to have in terms of price points. So this is to give you some guidelines. Then when you look in Europe, it's a bit more in the same range where it will oscillate between $3 to $5. So this is converted because it'll be like 3-4 euros. So I would say like $4 to $5. South Africa is actually leading the way in the African continent in terms of programmatic, where with value of around $7. This is again US dollars as an average transaction there. And then in Southeast Asia, Australia is where most of the value is coming, but you see that India is an interesting market because it's on one side really big, but on the other side, even though the economy is not structured the same as in the US, the value of audio is almost the same average than in the US, which is quite interesting, a market trend. So at the moment, audio is still, programmatic audio is still nascent. So this is where when you look at those curve of the CPM throughout the months, it's kind of goes in all directions. There's some seasonality that will impact positively or negatively the value of audio, but the trends are good. So here, speaking about the trend, what you should be understanding looking at this chart is the blue line is the number of impressions, so the growth in impression in the last year, and the green is the amount of impression bought by buyers. So what you should gather here is that the supply is growing, but the buyers are also buying more. Basically, the supply is not outpacing the buy. So it means that as a publisher, whether you're a podcaster, AM, FM station, music service, once you start contributing supply in a programmatic exchange, you'll find some agencies and marketers interested in advertising on your content. So it's worth the investment of time to set up programmatic in your offering. So in the US, so there's a lot of room to grow. So in the US, we get to 56% sell-through rates on a weekly average. So these 4 bars are the last 4 weeks. So that means that out of 100% of the supply sent to the exchange, 56% was sold at the price point the publisher wanted, and then the rest has room to grow. In the other market, you see that it's quite low, but if you do like a closer peek, even though like in Europe, it's on average 2%, when you look into the UK, specifically, you see that it's often above 25% sell-through rate. In Australia, you also see that like in rest of Asia, it's almost 0%. But then when you look at Australia, they will get to 10 to 15% sell-through rate. So it is still nascent, but it is growing, and there's real value for the publisher there. So you see here, again, the auction growth across the various months, and it's growing. So Asia is a bit behind, but you see that the other parts of the world have like nice growth curve. So it is not just something for the future, it's something that happens right now. So I think actually I covered all the points I wanted to cover out of London. So I'll ask Oscar, my colleague, to take it back from South Africa studio. Thank you, guys.
Good morning, people. My name is Oscar Semeno. I'm Director of Market Development for Triton Digital. And thank you, Benjamin, all the way from London. Couldn't make it this time, but next time for sure we'll be here together. So you saw those numbers. You saw a little bit of what the digital audio is all about at this moment, not just in South Africa, but in other places. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about what it is on the marketplace. So right now I have in the screen my slide that's called Programmatic Audio. What I wanted to show you here is how it works. What it is you have on the right-hand side, the publishers, and on the left-hand side, the audio buyers. You have DSPs, you have SSPs connected to each other. So the publishers, using one of the tools from Triton, which is called Yield Up, they allow the marketplace to purchase their impressions either in the open market or through PMPs. And the buyers, different buyers all across the globe, they use the different DSPs already integrated into Yield Up to transact those campaigns. So it's very interesting, it's very simple, and also a lot of people, they're trying to understand how this ad replacement or server-side ad replacement, ad insertion works. It's pretty much simple in the sense that we have a broadcast, the live radio station. They are broadcasting their content, and we are receiving the information, the digital, and broadcasting this through the streaming. So they have the radio automation system sending us the cue points, telling us exactly what content is, what the category of each content is. When we see an ad, this is where the trigger comes in place, either for programmatic buying or direct sales. We can have different audiences in different locations receiving different type of ads using the same streaming. So it's very efficient. It's very interesting in the sense that you can utilize, you can optimize your inventory, because now you're able to commercialize not only your digital inventory separate from your analog one, and give you more reach as well, because you might have audience reaching out from London or Toronto or Sydney that you might have interest in ad replacing for something else that is local, giving more content for their broadcasting. For the ad stitching technology that we offer, that it's in the marketplace, is fraud-free pretty much. What we do is we encode the broadcast in different formats, and when it comes to the servers, this is where the magic happens. This is where we are able to actually connect the ad tailored to the profile that advertisers are looking for. It's very simple, it's very efficient, it's 100% reachable audience for the publishers without any type of waste. And according to the profile of the publisher, of the audience, this is how the advertisers will be triggering that impression delivered. It's very simple in that sense, but also you got to understand that you have publishers doing programmatic sales because you have third parties commercializing the inventory, but also they might be interested in doing direct sales because we have the inventory that they can manage themselves. Not all the agencies have access to a DSP, and also perhaps they are interested in doing the direct sales because they have their on-demand audios, they have also podcast inventory, and this is where an ad server such as what Triton offers, the TAP, you will use for this direct sales. We have a lot of questions about, well, so what can I do with this? What can I do with the programmatic and direct sales? I'll be very simplistic in this case. You can actually get registration info, the age and gender that you can target against this. You can also use, and this is very important, I'm going to talk a little bit more afterwards about data. Data is very important, addressable impressions. And this is where the cookie, mobile ad IDs, and IP addresses are important. You can also, most of the time, perhaps the agencies will start with some national campaigns, and you can target also regionals, metros, GPS, also devices. Perhaps they're interested in a specific device, mobile, especially since now audience is so mobile. So this is very simplistic. There are much more that you can do, the DSPs, availabilities on what kind of targets they're going to offer, and this will definitely increase the value of the impressions. So agencies are saying, well, what about how can I track this? Well, you have exposure attribution. Again, it's very important to talk about addressable impressions. This is crucial. I think a lot of publishers are beginning to understand this point. But this is because the agents will require this information. If they want to do exposure attribution, they will require that the cookie syncs are enabled on the web players, the device ID is broadcasted through the mobile devices. And what it is the exposure attribution model tracks the listeners once they're exposed to an audio. And if the conversion, whatever you decide what the conversion is, if it is a visit to the website, if it is a purchase in the cart, or whatever it is that you decide what a conversion is, you can track this, not on the same day, perhaps a week, 2, 3, 4 weeks later. So it's very, very interesting. But again, crucial to have addressable impressions and addressable information in this. We have some case studies, guys, that we've done with different partners. In this case, we have a consumer credit card. This is actually, if I'm not mistaken, was the first campaign that ran in the United States in programmatic means. And what was done was added to the baseline, which was, I believe, was a display ad, the audio based to it. And at the end, we figured it out there was a 4.1 increase in engagement in the KPIs for this campaign, which digital audio drives the lift. We also saw cross-channel results where display was put together with display audio. And this was a quick service restaurant. They wanted to increase the drive traffic to their store locator search. And by adding, they use video and they use audio, and the results were 2.59% on the conversion rate for this result. This is done with Xaxis Radio. Another one that we saw was a big box retail. Audio was added as well, and frequency and reach was also increased. And the results were that the campaign increased the number of unique visits to their website. So everything is because audio was added, digital audio was added to the component of the campaigns. And you might be wondering, and this is more a technical side on what its specifications are, and this is obviously we can share more information. The advertisers, they're already aware of this, but it's very simplistic on the size of MP3s, the Ws, MAs. Okay, so I have to talk about the lengths of the ads. Usually you will have the advertisers saying, hey, you know what? Let's recycle whatever is already done for the traditional radio, 30-second spots. I would say, guys, think about what your audience is, because you want to grab the full attention of the audience. I would say the shorter, the simple, the better. 7 to 10 seconds perhaps, no music, because the pause voice will attract attention of the listener. Call for action or anything related to that. Tracking 1 by 1 pixels, also very important, because a lot of advertisers, what they try to do is a companion banner. They want to add a visual element to the audio. We will encourage you to use different types of banners, 300 by 250s, 728 by 90s, because depending on the publisher, whatever they have available, enabled on those features, you might be able to present this to the listener as well. And what is all this about, guys? It's growth triggers. Pretty much we're talking about the publisher will try to increase the audience by including new elements. We are seeing a lot of publishers start with podcasts is so hot right now. Everybody's talking, creating new channels, new niche of the listenership. And this is where you're going to increase your audience, web radios, and many other offerings as well. So this is a new supply. This is a new inventory that you're going to have available to offer to your advertisers as well. So it's either you increasing the volume by just allowing pre-rolls, also activating the mid-rolls, which increase the number, as you saw in the ad replacement in the slide. You increase the number of impressions by doing that, optimizing your inventory as well. The quality of your supply. Again, I have to talk about the addressable information, the information that the publishers should be able to provide, the registration data, profile audience. And this is important because advertisers will need this information. And diversify the buyers. You might think that just the radio buyers are the ones you're looking at your inventory. But no, sometimes non-traditional buyers might be looking at your digital inventory as well. So it's very interesting. It's a lot of information that I can pass it on. But I think I'm going to stop now. I think it's better if we start discussing about this. And let's just join the rest of the gang here in a second.
Thanks very much to Oscar and Benjamin in sunny London for their insights into something that I think has just whet our appetites for a really interesting discussion on what the possibilities are. We've seen the numbers, we've seen the graphs from both you and Benjamin, Oscar, and it certainly does, it's been sold. What is the nitty-gritty behind it? What are some of the things to consider when thinking about programmatic buying in the audio space, in the digital audio space? But now I'd also like to introduce you to our two panelists who will be joining Oscar as well. We've got Langa Sithole, the head of digital Johannesburg at FCB. Welcome, Langa. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've also got Taryn Hood, who's our media strategy manager here at Prime Media Broadcasting, so working a lot with Triton and Digital 365, and someone who's got experience in digital audio and marketing in general as well. I think a very diverse experience in the marketing field, both you and Langa, and I'm really interested to see what your thoughts are on this new frontier and where it's going, what it means for South African market, both the listeners and our consumers, because I think it's really interesting for us to delve into that. Taryn, let's start with you. Having heard heard from both Oscar and Benjamin, having worked in this space for some time and also marketing in general, what's your initial feeling on what the possibilities are?
I think it's an exceptionally exciting space to be in. I mean, this really is the new frontier of digital. We're seeing a rapid growth, not only internationally, but we're really starting to see the uptake in volumes and numbers of listeners who are looking for on-demand audio opportunities in South Africa as well. And I think it's really just a matter of time as the market starts opening up and you have more access to smartphones, especially on the mobile platforms as well. And cost of data is rapidly coming down. It's an ad space that hasn't been utilized. It really is on the frontier and in a pioneering space. It's a wonderful revenue opportunity from a broadcasting perspective and from a media owner's perspective. And from an advertiser's perspective, this is a new step into the audio space that allows very smart attribution modeling that we were never able to do before, and you cannot currently do on terrestrial radio, especially locally in South Africa. So it's very exciting, especially when you can also start overlaying the visual component, which audio generally has previously lacked. And I think that's our next step in the audio space. So I'm very excited. I think broadcasters and publishers need to be excited about this, because we've been talking about it being the future, but it really is now on our doorstep, and those doors are opening. So it's time.
Langa, from your perspective, we're in an age where clients are looking at their marketing spend and what they get for that marketing spend. You know, so looking at return on investment, metrics a lot more, a lot of focus digitally as well. As an agency, and you're obviously representing clients and what they want, FCB has a look at the marketing mix. So there's radio, there's TV, digital as well. From your perspective, what do you see, you know, do you see a usefulness for clients at this stage in the South African space around programmatic audio?
To be honest, I think there is an opportunity. Like yesterday, I spent some time actually, you know, trying to research and find some numbers in terms of the audience in SA that we have. And I wasn't really able to get some concrete numbers, which kind of plays a role when we aren't selling any type of channel to advertisers. And to me, besides the numbers, I think I look at it as another channel within the marketing mix. We shouldn't kind of hype it up to an extent that it's going to change or revolutionize the digital mix as per se. Yes, it is growing digital offering, and you know, when I look at it and as another medium, the time and effort that it requires to produce the type of content versus the impact for me is quite questionable there, because as an advertiser, I think you always, your key emphasis is to reach as many people as possible in this instance, and also make sure that you're telling stories. Yes, podcast does give us that opportunity to actually package, you know, a series of stories and tell our stories, but with the production of that coming at an expense to a brand, whereas I can go to, you know, your normal radio and actually put my ad and reach as many people there, because we know in South Africa, radio is still quite a big medium to utilize in the space.
You mentioned that. You know, and Taryn spoke about data, and it's falling. It's still, we'd like it to fall a lot more. Do you see though, and we've got I mean, TV, radio, you know, the current landscape. 100%. Do you see that changing? I mean, we've seen the impact of podcasts in places like the US, Europe, other parts of, you know, parts of Africa as well. Do you see that changing?
I think in future, there is opportunities for that change to take place. I think a nice example would be if you look at TV and how people are consuming it now. You know, things have changed. People have just kind of moved from your normal type of consumer of TV, and now we basically looking at on-demand kind of approaches. So similarly with radio, you kind of anticipate that in future, people will be looking at different ways of consuming content, you know, the type of content that I would like to consume at a specific time. However, there's also, I think, a challenge in that, because the nature of digital kind of allows the user to have more control over, you know, the type of content that they consume. Now, we're talking about audio growth. You could potentially have ads within pre-rolls or in between the actual content that you're actually producing. But the flexibility then of digital is that I can potentially skip ads and get into the actual content that I want to consume, which then is I don't know what's the word to put right now, but it does pose a challenge.
Yeah, it's a drawback potentially
to that.
Yeah.
On that sense, I have to say, because audio is a little bit different to video, where the video, the YouTubes today, what is the first thing you do? You're counting until the number 5 to skip the video pre-roll that's coming through.
100%.
On the side of the audio is a little bit different because it comes native with the streams. If it is a service-side insertion, means that the listener won't be able to skip because it's part of the broadcast that is coming through. So that both pre-rolls or mid-rolls, actually even on podcasts, because you have everything ad insertion dynamically, so you won't have the trigger. But another thing I want to talk about is what you just mentioned about the numbers.
Yeah.
And that is, I know Tyron probably is tired of hearing from me of data, I need this addressable impression and everything else. But for publishers and for you guys, that where you're looking for data, numbers, that is something so basic that publishers, they should encourage, whoever they're working with, I need my basic numbers. I need to know what it is. And with Tyron, I think we have some experience in the past, what, they believed that they were, their size, what in reality was much different. And this is how publishers can go and say, I'm going to spend some dollars to increase or change my digital view if I don't know how is this affecting my audience. So I encourage the publishers, to whoever they're working with, to request the basic minimum type of information. And also this is where we work with the webcast metrics, which is a standard way of measuring digital audio. Hopefully one day we have different rankers, international, we have in the US, we have Latin America, soon to release another one for Europe. We hope one day have one for South Africa. I think that is something that advertisers is looking for. You want to see what is the reach, you want to see what is that you can do with this. Mm-hmm. So I think it's crucial. It's not just for advertisers to request the publisher, there's a publishers as well to request their providers, what is that they have. And not just about the digital audience for live streamings. We're talking about podcasts. Mm. What is how many downloads you have, how many plays you have, live plays, where are they coming from? You need to have this information because most of the time they will host this audio somewhere, and what you know is how many times doesn't give you the experience.
How
of
far into your podcast are your users?
Of course.
Getting
so
into?
For me, it's crucial. You should demand some information, basic information, because you need this information in order to what is next? What is the strategy you're going to follow through your digital audience? Because if you don't know the information, how are you going to react to it?
100%.
Langa, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. So you mentioned, I think, 2 points around the fact that, the ad actually comes in a native type of form. Now, you get to a space where consumers are actually getting to a space where they're now willing to pay subscription to not really get ads served to them because it's kind of an irritation. And I believe that, for this type of channel to really work, it needs to be kind of user-driven. I need to be the one kind of initiating it and also willing to actually consume whatever the content is that I'm looking for. Excluding the ads that are there. So that's the one point. And the second thing, I think you mentioned it in your presentation to say, for instance, brands need to look at keeping it short, sweet, to the point, 7 seconds. Now for a brand, 7 seconds to me sounds very short. Can I build any brand equity around a 7-second ad?
Let me ask you something on that, and the same thing. So, today audience is like, I want everything now. I have no patience to anything. Yeah. So if you're gonna, on radio, you're fighting for noise, with the noise that is out there because I'm listening in the car, there's traffic, there's people honking on me. If I'm in the house, I'm cleaning the house, there's loud music. So your ad has to fight against all the stuff that's happening around.
Yes.
On the digital, on the streaming, you already have the attention of the listener. Usually what happens, we already have something in your ear. Because you're at work, you don't want to bother your colleague that's next door, or because you should be working instead of listening to music, right? So you already have the attention of this person. So you don't need to fight for that noise that you already have on the radio. At the same time, the first time that I saw Programmatic, one of the Programmatic campaigns in South Africa was, I think, 46 seconds, which was like, that's a lot. Yeah. Tell me, you as a listener, not as an advertiser, tell me, are you gonna, after 7, 10, 12 seconds, still listen to the ad? Probably not. Because you have few seconds at the beginning to grab the attention of the listener. You have those precious seconds to tell the story if they're going to listen to you. Let's go to video. I'm so used to on YouTube that you have videos 40 seconds, a minute or so. When I see that, I don't even pay attention anymore. But if I see that something's very short, 12 seconds, you know what? I don't even skip that, because by the time I lift my finger to go to skip that, and because it's 12 seconds, that's, you know what, I can live with that. And the same is for audio. I think that, I'm not saying that 7 seconds should be the ones. Most likely the challenge for a company to create different creators. My thing is, think about who is your audience. If you want to be effective, because you can make any ad and just send it to the broadcast. But do you want to be effective? I think in that sense, that's where it should be. You know?
Terry? What I do want to say is, I mean, we've also done a lot of research into the audio space as well from a creative perspective, and we're actually doing some neuroscience research at the moment in terms of what makes audio advertising effective. And I don't think it's just about the duration. I think there are a number of factors that really play into it. I mean, we've actually seen neuro engagement uplift with music. So we can't be hard and fast about that. I think it's absolutely crucial that a brand has and develops an audio identity and an audio signature. And those sort of things are actually created through music, through voices, through characters, etc., that create consistency for a brand in the audio space. So I, at this point in time, having been both a marketer on the advertising side and on the publishing side, ultimately we want the best results for our clients. And I'm going to be very excited to see when the neuroscience research actually comes out to really prove what those drivers and factors are.
I would love to see that.
Effective audio. And I really do believe that the consumption of audio, whether it be terrestrial or in the digital space, is going to be very similar, because the brain consumes audio in the same way. However, we do also know that there's research out there that general attention spans of audiences are dropping over time. So we do need to be cognizant of that, and also be mindful of the regulatory requirements of some advertisers, especially, for instance, in the financial services or pharmaceutical spaces as well, where they can't, and they just cannot cut their audio too short to be able to fit in the regulatory requirements. So yes, it's a challenging space, but I think it's a really exciting space. And I think traditionally marketers and advertisers have not given audio enough attention as they have done in the visual space, where they've given brands consistent and clear audio, consistent identities, and haven't done that in the audio space.
Totally agree.
Looking at the tension, and I think Langa, you mentioned it, briefly, but looking at the tension, I suppose, Taryn, looking on the publishing side, so not necessarily, and Langa, please feel free to jump in as well. Where we look at the tension of the freemium model. So if you look at any of the music streaming services, use it for free, and in between there'll be adverts that are targeted at you. If I'm willing to pay 99 Rand, say it's 100 Rand a month, I'll stream as much as I want to, I don't have data concerns, I won't have adverts in between while I'm listening to my music. What type, where does that tension sit firstly as a publisher? Do you look at the subscription type model as the clean? Where do you get that balance between the two as well? What's the sweet spot? And then from the side of the agencies, where are you looking at, if the freemium model then closes off advertisers to a consumer because they are willing to pay for to have it without ads, what does that then mean to you? Where do you then push your advertisers towards? So maybe Taryn, to start with you, where's that tension or the consideration when it comes to that type of model?
I still think the market is exceptionally niche for people who are actually prepared to pay that sort of premium, especially in the audio space at this point in time. I think it's going to take a lot of time to see any form of critical mass there, to be honest with you. I also believe, and we do have research that proves that there are a number of audiences that are willing to receive advertising because they actually see it as a form of information, receiving information. And if you are doing wonderful attribution modeling and your targeting is really succinct, and you are reaching the right type of audiences, I'm actually one of those people who would rather receive advertising that is better targeted at myself and just receive any form of advertising. advertising, as we said, is a form of content and a way of receiving information in market. How would you know about that great sale that's happening for the brand that you purchase every single month, etc. So yes, I do believe it's still going to be niche, but I do think there will be a place for it to play in. And I do believe that there will be a portion of the market that will be prepared to pay, and I think that's another opportunity for publishers to be mindful of, because subscription modeling models are another revenue stream.
Thank you. Your take on that?
I think from my side, the one thing is, if we had to look at the closed model, for instance, and we can't actually serve any ads within that space, then as strategists or planners, we need to look at alternative ways to actually make the budgets that we have work harder for us. Because, you know, you want to get to a space where I'm actually a willing user again, to this point, to say, I want to find the content that resonates with me. Let it not be forced upon me to actually consume that content, if that makes sense. And there's other platforms that are available for us to actually look into, that you can, you know, invest in if the audience is basically within that niche segment of in the premium type of placement where I don't even get ads, because, you know, I can imagine myself at the gym, you know, on the treadmill. Next minute, some ads are coming on, you know, distracting me. Well, maybe I'm listening to Drake. You know, I kind of love my Drake kind of music, and next minute there's an ad. You know, it's kind of an irritation. So we don't want to get to a place where digital becomes this other channel that is just, you know, an irritation. You know what I mean? And it's just because of the form that it comes in. Whereas your other ATL kind of mediums, you know, you could play radio in the background. It's kind of passive kind of medium, which will play in the background, and you'll hear certain ads, etc., etc. We've kind of have been used to that. Where digital, again, that flexibility that I have a choice to say I want this or I don't want that, it is going to play a really big part, even from our side, in terms of when we do plan. Do we go the route of actually, you know, putting our investment within the podcast scenario as well?
Yeah, I think as well, you know, the freemium model and everything else, publishers obviously have this new, you know, player in the market, you know, the online music servers, so many out there. But I think and I'm talking here as a consumer, as a listener, if I want to personalize, customize my experience, obviously I can go to so many different, you know, services such as that. But at the same time, as the publisher, if they have this original content that I can only find there, I will go to both places. So, you know, I will have, you know, and about advertising, I think it depends on your marketplace. I work a lot with Latin America, and everybody, all the advertisers look at me with this face like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? In Colombia, in Bogota, a lot of the radio stations, they have 20 minutes of consecutive ads on their radio, on the traditional radio. 20 minutes. Talk about, you know, and they are sold out. They have everything full. They have, so imagine, Terry, you playing 20 minutes of consecutive ads here in Johannesburg. No, exactly.
So have they done any research though on how the consumers are feeling about that?
All of them are doing the same thing. So it means that the consumers, they have no problem with that. Now, on the digital side, because again, we're talking about, you know, the patience, people don't, one click away to go to something else. Yeah. I know that some of the publishers, I start doing on the advert placement, because user, you know, experience is the best. You have to offer the best user experience. They are using the same technology to change that. So instead of playing 20 minutes of ads, they might release 1 or 2 ads, and the rest is affiliate content, music, special programs created specific for the internet. You know, so you're basically creating a new type of station using the same type of content, but 20 minutes. So it depends on the market. It depends on the behavior of the listeners. Colombia is great for radio. They listen a lot of radio, and here as well. But the behavior is a little bit different. Yeah. You know, so I think for the publishers, original content If you have original content, you will go there because that is the only place you're going to find this, and that you won't find that in other places as well.
Absolutely.
So,
Oscar, if you're looking at it from the client's perspective, and you look at, you know, you spoke about data earlier, and I think some of the graphs we spoke to, you know, clicks per whatever the metric is, you know, and that we're looking at. What is that user journey? Because I think it's quite established in the when we talk about digital, as in a website or a mobile site, you've got the impression, then there's the click through. You know, so you can track that click-through rate. So you can see that journey, and the metrics around that, I mean, are quite detailed. When you're looking at audio, so I've got the podcast in my ear, I've got this advert that then comes on, 7 seconds. I like the advert, it hooks me. You know, I'm tuned in, so all of that, all those boxes are ticked. How, from the advertiser's perspective, do we track that journey about what does it mean for conversion rate? Has it created awareness about a product or service? Have I acted on that to go and buy that service or product? Can you speak to us about that? How do you track that?
Again, I'm going to go back to the same thing, addressable impressions. That is the key here, because as advertisers, first thing you have to see different minutes. Oh, I want to target male, females, ages, that consumers' behaviors or something, and you are unable to do that if you don't have addressable impressions from the publisher side. And what is addressable impression? Pretty much is the web players that would enable the cookie sync, because that's how you drop, you know, they start creating the profile for the listeners, for the mobiles of device ID. You know, by doing that, you're able to. And again, let's go back a little bit here about the measurement, because we have the digital audio measurement, which is different to the campaigns measurement. You know, digital audio, we're talking about webcast metrics, we're measuring the TLH, we're talking the sessions, the average session starts. This is crucial information that they need to know the size, you know, where they're developing money, everything else. For advertisers, obviously, usual tech should work, but again, remember that not all players are addressable because they don't have those features. So as a proxy, you should consider the post listening. So for us, we consider an impression delivered when it's heard 100% for in-stream. So that is something that at the same time, when you're targeting your audience, because not 100% of the audience will be addressable, you should still consider genre, because, you know, the profile of that audience for that radio station, you know, more or less you're going to reach that. So that is important, you know, for the measurement side. You should consider the usual tech that you have, but also the limitations, because not 100% of your audience will be addressable.
Mm. If we look at I suppose you've got experience across a number of markets. You spoke about the Colombian model.
Sorry, Colombia. Sorry.
We've seen some of the metrics
Love
in
Colombia.
Benjamin's presentation around the US and the differences there. The South African market is unique, as is any other market. How do you see it rolling out? Being an early player in the South African space, you've probably been aware of our high data costs and the likes. What do you see as an outsider, the potential in the South African market?
Well, I think personally, what I've seen in South Africa in the last 24 months is something incredible. Maybe it could be a case study for other countries, because when we start working with South Africa, there was really nothing happening here. It was streaming and great, beautiful, everything is there. You know, you have your players, mobile apps and everything else. Some strong players began working in this market, and I think the fact that they were not scared, perhaps, of embracing changes, technologies, and and mainly the fact that you believe that your audience is worth X amount of money, and this is where I'm going to stick with it. And the advertisers are actually trying different things. So what I see in South Africa is a total change in 24 months, where before nothing was happening, and here you have everything happening. You have PMPs, you have direct sales, you have monetization of the podcast, you have the measurement that now, you know, publishers are asking, hey, I want to have the same type of measurement because I want to know what my audience is. You have the advertisers going, you know, I want to use different DSPs to, you know, I want to start using DMPs, you know, to target my audience. And this is where the pressure goes to the publishers off, because they need to start offering this type of audience. And I think you guys shouldn't be looking at anybody else in a different way, because you guys are using the same technologies that are being used in Europe, in the United States, in the same way, and perhaps a little bit different, in the sense that what we're seeing here in the programmatic means, in the programmatic market, is that most of the stuff is running in PMPs. In other places, it's open market. That's the king. They just went about. Here in South Africa, it's very unique in the sense that most of the buys in the programmatic market are PMPs, which is very interesting. So what do I see happening in South Africa? I think the sky is the limit for you guys. I think there's so many things coming on board. I think the companies, technology companies such as Triton, that we are working to bring new features into the marketplace. I don't think I'll be scared to ask anybody here in South Africa to try, because they're willing to try different things. And that's how you find what your future is, because the future is here right now. You're not going to be waiting for something that's going to happen in the future. No, because it's right here. You are using it right now. You know.
Yeah. And I just wanted to touch on that. I think we're quite fortunate in the sense that we've been able to be market leaders as Prime Media Broadcasting. I think we've got an absolute responsibility in leading the space to ensure that pricing is kept at a responsible pricing and entry point as well. I think they can, and there are players in the industry as well who really want to take advantage of this from a revenue perspective. But we need to make sure that it's accessible and comparatively priced to other channels as well. The other piece, we were talking about metrics. We don't yet have industry metrics, and Langa, you touched on it earlier. It's very difficult to find, what are the actual metrics in our total ecosystem in South Africa, and we don't actually have that. I mean, each publisher has got their own statistics that they can share, but not as a network in South African consumption. I sit on the BRC Radio Research Council, and I know that we're working on 2 projects from a Radio Research Council perspective to step us into the digital space. And then the other part is the responsibility of the publishers to start engaging with the likes of the IAB to ensure that we have the right metrics in place from an effective measures perspective, etc. So I think that's really important from our perspective to really move into that space. The other thing I can't emphasize more is the importance of data, the importance of third-party data, but also first-party data from the publisher's perspective. I know that data is a big focus for Prime Media Broadcasting and needs to be for publishers, but also from an advertiser's perspective as well. I think if you start opening up your imagination to what is possible on audio, as opposed to what we've never been able to do from a terrestrial perspective, is, for instance, to be able to start doing storytelling through advertising. So, for instance, you can deliver advert 1 as your pre-roll, advert 2 as a mid-roll, advert 3 as another mid-roll, etc. Or you can do correct frequency targeting, and you're now looking at individual listeners as opposed to just a set of broad listeners that are generally being broadcast to. You can also ensure that the right messages are being delivered to the right listeners, whereas once again that was just really open broadcast. And here you can be very targeted, very specific, and very clear in the message that you want to get across to each individual that you're targeting. So this is a whole new game from an audio perspective, and I think one of the biggest challenges locally is that actually bringing the digital strategists together with the traditional strategists, and we still have got a gap there, because now all of a sudden the digital strategists are needing to learn what was previously seen as a traditional space, and the traditional strategists are really being forced to stretch themselves into the digital space. And that's where the growth of the hybrid strategists, and this is the ideal platform for hybrid strategists to really shine. And it's a challenge I would put out to the media buying and advertising industry. And I think the other challenge I really put out is to the creative agencies as well, is to also start thinking about versioning and production in quantitative measures as opposed to just qualitative measures as well, because now you can start developing multiple sets of advertising that is a lot more targeted, as opposed to just producing 1 or 2 commercials that you're trying to expect to get across to everybody. That gives you an opportunity to grow your CEPs, your customer entry points, your unique value propositions, the number of messages and associations that you deliver with brands. And yeah, I could go on forever. So I'm really excited about this space. But then we give somebody else a chance.
My final thoughts on that, and I suppose open it to each one of our panelists. So as I'm hearing you talk, Taryn, about creating those, getting down to individualizing, our messages and who we're targeting, and I kind of. Not that I've ever had an agency hat on or a client's hat on, but I kind of view it through the clients or the agency saying, oh gosh, this is the budget we're working with. These are the resources we're working with. We've got these. This is our brief across TV, radio, traditional, online, and your programmatic ads on the website, and you've got the digital audio. Creating, I suppose, material that is specific to those. I mean, do you think it opens us up to, trying to individualize, content, which should be best practice and is best practice, but as we start breaking it down and as clients become more demanding because their, marketing budgets are either shrinking or their markets themselves are becoming more competitive, so they're wanting more from their marketing spend. It sounds like it puts pressure on all of us, on the whole ecosystem.
Absolutely. I mean, as we know, we are moving to a space where you're starting to talk one-on-one or in segmented terms. But ultimately, why would you not go down a route that's going to deliver greater return on investment? Why would you not go down a route where you can be more specific in your messaging and your communication, a hell of a lot more relevant in your communication, that is going to deliver a better return on investment. So yes, individualized, without a doubt. It is the future, it is where we're going, especially from a digital perspective. And I think it's a challenge from content creators as well, because we also know that content consumption is also becoming individuated as well to some degree. People want to start personalizing the streams of information and content that they're receiving. They want to receive and hear a bit of this, and they want to receive a bit of that. And we know that's why on-demand listening or on-demand content consumption is really starting to take off. It's because you can choose the platter that's in front of you now.
Okay. Langa, how do you experience that? I suppose the pressure on the ecosystem as such.
I think you raise a very valid point. When it comes to the production side of things, you look at the cost of that and against the actual reach that you potentially get, and what's out there that could potentially get you still the same impact with kind of less production is kind of what's playing in my head when you're raising that question. And not in any way putting down the future of podcasting in South Africa. I think there's definitely opportunities within the space, and our creatives or people that are actually creating the content. I think that's where we need to be a little bit smarter in terms of how the actual content is produced, because the podcast targeting, the capabilities that it has, it's very similar to any other platform that's out there in the market. I can use my CRM data, upload that, target the specific people, serve them with this specific type of content. But does that shift the needle to exponential values of whether it's driving leads or whatever the objective is? So technology is here. It is changing the landscape, but I think the foundation or core of everything to basically function in a seamless way, I think will be very much kind of underpinned by the actual content that is being produced, because you want to get people to kind of lean in, then be more of, there's an ad, I need to get out of this. It needs to be a seamless type of integration, and I think with that approach, creating that type of audios that you can disseminate through the web, etc. That's where I see a lot of engagement maybe for this type of channel.
Oscar, you've heard the two prevailing thoughts. What's yours?
Well, I think now comes the question of, is it radio, is it digital audio, what is it? I think that for digital for broadcaster buyers, for example, it's a new way to enhance the creative, because you can add now like a synchronized banner. You offer new content as well, podcasts, user services, and everything else, and new formats as well. And for the digital buyer, you're adding a new format, which is a new front, which is the programmatic side. So when you have those two sides coming together, there's a lot of challenges because of what the medium is doing, but at the same time, I think is an opportunity, to look at this as, hey, because it's no longer the fact the radio is one to many. Now it's one to one, because automatically you say something on the radio, is a Twitter coming in, is a message, is a WhatsApp, is anything is related, right? So I think it's just embracing the changes and just looking at how you're going to use that to your future. How are you going to be able to take advantage of this to increase your user experience, and the bottom line is the revenues also they're coming into your company. So yeah.
To my panelists, thank you very much. It's been wholly insightful. I suppose the possibilities exist there. There's some things that we need to think about. And I suppose that's the nature of any new technology, number one. And anything where they're competing interests, whether they be competing interests of resources, time, different market segmentation, and I think with options growing for consumers, on demand, or am I going to, listen to it real time? Do I want the magic? What do I want? And which group do we then, I suppose, want to speak to as clients, as publishers as well? I think the same applies when we're creating content. What are we trying to do? Who are we trying to reach? And whose message, or how are we trying to get our message through? So, Tulanga Setole, Head of Digital FCB in Johannesburg, Taryn Hood, Prime Media Broadcasting's Media Marketing, Media Strategy Manager. Yes, that's it. Yeah. She does all of those things, marketing, media strategy. And to Oscar Semeno from Triton Digital out of Miami, Florida. Thank you so much. Thank you very much to Benjamin. Benjamin, we hope you're watching. You're probably having a very cold drink in your warm office. Tea, yes, tea. It's never too late for tea in the UK. Thank you very much. And to you watching, thank you very much for joining us. If you joined the conversation midway through or at any point, or you want to watch it, if you've been watching everything, you can email info@365digital.co.za, and you'll get, the great team at 365 Digital, who obviously work with Triton in South Africa, will then send you the discussion. Use it. Add it. There's a hashtag on Twitter going on, which we'll continue to monitor. Hashtag Digital Audio SA. Please join in the conversation. If you've been using Triton and working with 365 Digital in SA, let us know. How's it been for you? What are your thoughts if you aren't using it as yet? Whether you're a consumer, whether you're a client, whether you're a publisher, whether you're from an agency. Let us know your thoughts, because I think it's a space in which sharing is going to grow. Our understanding of it so much quicker, from a content perspective as well. And hopefully, data falls sooner rather than later, and we can all play and have as much fun as we want to. But I'm sure that will come in time. For now, thank you very much for joining us. It's been great. Thank you to my panelists once again. Thank you to Benjamin. It's been great, and continue watching the space.